Well, ultimately, they're going to provide recommendations. It's Congress that appropriates money. Let me provide an area where there could be bipartisan collaboration. I mean, the defense budget, which is nearly $1 trillion, is dominated by 5 primes. There has been tremendous reporting about the waste, fraud, and abuse in that budget. The Pentagon hasn't passed an audit and has failed the last 6 or 7 audits. So if they go to say there needs to be more open competition, not the monopolization in defense contractors, and propose recommendations, that's something that I think could be supported. If they find areas of truly wasteful spending across the government, they would get support.
Well, after raising more than $1.5 billion during her failed election campaign and ending up with $20 million in debt, it seems Kamala Harris is desperate for more cash because the vice president is still reportedly pumping Democrat donors for money weeks after the election loss. Joining us now is journalist, writer and co-founder of the Based Politics podcast, Brad Palumbo. Brad, good to see you. Look, either the Democrats have no idea how to manage money or can't read the room. I suspect both at this point. But how bad of a look is this?
It's pathetic and insulting. I mean, you blew $1 billion, including on celebrity endorsements and building 6-figure podcast sets to be built up for an hour interview and then torn down. And yet you have the audacity come to hardworking Americans who can barely afford to buy groceries, many of them, because in part due to the Biden-Harris administration's policies, and say, give us more money. We squandered it all. Now we're millions in debt. They should hang their heads in shame. But also, any American, I mean, they send these fundraising emails because they work, right? And any American who is actually still giving these people money needs to get their head checked, because you could be sending malaria nets to Africa. You could be feeding the homeless, but instead you're giving Kamala Harris more money. At this point, people, their capacity for stupidity sometimes does amaze me, honestly.
Hey, Brad, Hollywood star George Clooney is reportedly furious that Barack Obama used him to force President Joe Biden out of the US election. Clooney's newspaper article calling for Biden to stand aside for Kamala Harris was widely credited for changing the course of the election.
You took a big swing, and thank God you hit that ball out, because
it could have gone very badly.
It could have gone very, very badly.
Still go badly.
Well, listen, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be going pretty well right now, but.
Yeah, well, it did go badly for the Democrats. Kamala Harris, of course, was trounced in the polls, but Brad, Clooney is now complaining that Obama, who sort of manipulated him into doing the dirty work on his behalf, has now left him to take most of the blame for the election loss.
Yeah, I mean, that take aged like milk, obviously. We don't know how Biden would have done, but it is kind of hard to imagine he could have done that much worse than Kamala Harris. I mean, this is a historic loss. It is kind of sad in a sense that Obama and other members of the Democratic elite didn't have the courage to say publicly, yes, Joe needs to step down, and instead they outsourced that dirty work to a celebrity actor. But it did need to be said, and I will give him some credit for actually sticking his neck out there and saying, yeah, listen, this guy, he can't cut it, because we all knew it. Everyday Americans knew it, that Biden was no longer up to the job and was going to get trounced by Trump most likely. But I think where this train of thought fell apart was saying, and that's why we need to give Kamala Harris the nomination with no primary. That turned out to be a massive mistake, as anybody who was honest and followed her political career before this and knew she had the charisma of a wet blanket and cackled randomly for no reason would have told you it didn't work out very well.
Yeah, it was blatantly obvious, Brad, that it certainly didn't work out well.